And the winner of our The Last Jedi bundle giveaway is going to be announced in a little bit. Welcome back to the Resistance Broadcast, the official podcast of StarWarsNewsNet.com. My name is John Hoey. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for helping us blow right past the 2,000 follower mark on Twitter this past week.
Woo, woo, woo.
The Resistance is growing at a rapid pace, and that is all thanks to you out there. Keep spreading the word about the show. Our Star Wars March Madness Coolest Character Round 1 polls are posted, so go vote on those matchups. Let your voice be heard on which characters you think are the coolest in the galaxy. We are going to announce that Last Jedi bundle giveaway contest winner in just a little bit, where one lucky winner out of nearly 800 entrants will be the chosen one. Man, we have so much show for you today, so let's get it going by first saying hi to James Baney, Patrick Covey, and Bill Sheehy. What's up, guys?
Dude, who's ready for Jon Favreau? I'm so pumped.
So money, baby.
So money, baby. Swingers.
Double down.
I don't know what these fools are on about. I guess they're huge Swingers fans, but I'm not. Welcome to the show. Hope you guys enjoy all this talk about Star Wars tonight.
Man, I still can't get over Pat's picks for March Madness.
Which, by the way, somebody called me out on Twitter today, and I had to slam them down. I'm sorry.
It's all good, but hey, I'm here to win. So hey, Pat, good on you, mate. But let's talk some Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of winning, we had a poll put out there about the end of Rebels, and we simply said, do you like how Star Wars Rebels ended? And we asked you, yes, no, or I don't watch Rebels. And 7% of you said, no, you didn't like the ending. 23% of you out there, so about a quarter of you said, I don't watch Rebels. And a whopping 70% said, yes, you did like the ending of Rebels. Guys, were you shocked that over 2/3 of the fans out there, including people who don't watch Rebels, loved the ending of the show?
I was kind of surprised that 25% said that they didn't watch it. I thought it would be more than that. But then again, I think the demographic that we're polling here are people that dive a little bit deeper. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that I'm not surprised that that same demographic would be the demographic to say, yeah, I liked it. You know what I mean? And a very small but vocal few are like, absolutely not. I didn't like this. I'm gonna have to go 50% or higher that I didn't like it. You know, so no.
It really kind of warms my heart that 70%. Like you said, more than 2/3 like it, because I really, really enjoyed it. And the fact that after everything with The Last Jedi, the fact that we were able to get Star Wars fans to 70% agree with something is a pretty big deal. So
Yeah.
I was very happy with that.
Thumbs up, Filoni.
Yeah, right.
Anything above a 50-50 split is good news for Star Wars.
Yep. And for our best comment, we go to Helio Carrasco at silent_H, and his E in silent is a 3. He said, I actually did like the ending, surprised they went with such a cliffhanger, but with the possibility of new cartoons or movies that revolve around the same characters, we may actually get some closure. So that's, it's a fair statement. It was open-ended, and it opens up some possibilities. But thank you for that, Helio, for that awesome comment. You got the best likes, so you got a shout-out. Now it's time, guys. It is time for the giveaway winner announcement. We've been waiting for this for a while. We needed it to hit 750 retweets, and it got up to 790 retweets of people entering this. So thank you all so much. It just makes it that much more special for whoever's about to win this thing. And what it is the Last Jedi bundle giveaway contest, and it involves the Last Jedi on Blu-ray, the Last Jedi novelization by Jason Fry, and 2 Resistance Broadcast t-shirts, one of which is shirtless Kylo Ren Lego, and the other is our Viva La Resistance fist holding the lightsaber. And the winner of the Last Jedi bundle is at Anthony DB99. Congratulations,
Woo!
Anthony!
Woo! Congratulations.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome, Anthony.
Now, the trick here, though, is Anthony needs to have listened to this, because we are not posting this on Twitter. We're not sending him a message. He better find out that he won this thing, or we're going to move right on to the next person. So hopefully we hear from Anthony. But congratulations, Anthony. You are the lucky winner.
I have faith in Anthony. Come on, buddy.
He will feel it through the Force. All right, now, James, it's time for the Newsnet. What's happening this week?
The man who brought you Iron Man, Jon Favreau, is back in the Star Wars universe. And when I say he brought you Iron Man, I don't just mean he directed the movie. I mean, this is the guy who said he wouldn't do it unless he could hire Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark. StarWars.com announced last Thursday that Jon Favreau is going to be executive producer and writer of a new series for the upcoming Disney streaming service. Right now, he seems to be Disney's golden boy, or at least one of them, because he brought you The Jungle Book, and he's now currently working on The Lion King, which is rumored to be extremely impressive. So, Pat, I'm jumping straight to you. This guy, he's mostly known for film. Jon Favreau, mostly known as an actor and director. Is Favreau the man for the job? I mean, is this a good pick for a TV series?
This is a phenomenal pick for television. This is a guy who has had a lot of experience in the business of storytelling. And if there's anything Star Wars needs, it's good storytellers. This is the guy, out of every movie I've seen him do, whether it be, Iron Man 1 or Iron Man 2, or working on any of the Avengers films, playing as Happy in the Marvel films as well. He's worked on other stuff like the movie Elf, the Christmas favorite. He was in that. He worked on that. And what he does is he does something magical where he gets you into the mentality of these characters, almost like you're reading a storybook, and he pulls you into the story. And if there's something we need in television these days, because television at times can be quite bland, we need to feel that pull back into TV again. We really need that for Star Wars, so this guy's got what we need.
Well, Lucasfilm has just hired 2 TV directors or creators to do their movies, and now they're bringing directors for film and putting it in the hot seat for television. So, I mean, are you still standing by that? I mean, it seems kind of backwards in that case.
It can be in some way, but what they're trying to do is more of a cinematic experience that they were doing on television anyways. They're just ready to make that transition to the next step up.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for Benioff and Weiss to go bigger. And for Favreau, I don't think television is a step down for him. If anything, it's just a new way to expand what he's doing and maybe do some more short form stuff, but still get the points across, still tell you that wonderful story he's wanted to tell you, and it's going to maybe bring back some love for television again.
Yeah, I personally, I think you're hitting it on the nose. I mean, if you separate the Game of Thrones, guys getting their own series, that's just an upgrade for them. They deserve it. They did really good here. They're getting to do their own series. Now let's look at the streaming service on its own, and you have someone, who are we going to put in charge of this? Well, we could put a TV director or TV show runner, executive producer on that, or we could just get the best of the best of the best and make sure this thing hits home runs the whole way through. Bill, I'm jumping over to you. With Favreau being announced as the executive producer, does this give you any hints onto what type of a show we might get from him?
I had a thought earlier today after I heard.
Good for you, Bill.
Finally, it took at least 24 years, but yeah.
I think I had a thought.
Exactly. So, you look at what Favreau's been doing recently. You look at The Lion King. Who's his Simba? Who's the adult Simba?
Donald Glover.
You look at the movie that he's... Yeah, Donald Glover.
The adult Simba?
Yeah, adult Simba.
Glover.
Donald Glover is his adult Simba.
It's not Matthew Broderick?
It's not Matthew Broderick,
okay.
no. Donald Glover is his
Lion
Simba.
King. Different Lion King. Okay.
Donald Glover is his Simba. What movie that's coming out next is Favreau in that Donald Glover is also in? Solo, a Star Wars story.
Oh, that was on the tip of my tongue. It was on the tip of my tongue.
Who does Donald Glover play in Solo, a Star Wars story?
Lando
Calrissian. Now, this is just a thought. I know it's 24 years in the making, like John said, but what if it's a Lando series where we've always heard it's the underworld.
Ooh.
We've always heard that TV show is the underworld. We know that what people are most excited for, besides seeing Han Solo in the Solo movie, is seeing Donald Glover as Lando. Why not use that? We know that people are going to love and is an accessible character, and use that to get that underworld that we've always been told that we were going to get, and doing it in a compelling way. It's a thought. It's a shot in the dark, but why not? You know,
It's interesting. It would definitely take us in a new direction.
Exactly. And so for Disney wants this to be successful, wants their streaming service to be successful. So why not have an Underworld series with Donald Glover as Lando as your headliner and really kick that thing into gear?
That's an interesting take. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah.
I just wonder if it seems like he's escalating himself in terms of his personal career. I don't know if Donald Glover wants to be under anyone else's thumb.
Well, once again, it's a thought, and I'm often wrong, and like you used to say, you know, if I'm wrong, we'll just delete the episode and it won't matter.
We'll just delete the episode. Yeah.
We have a lot of episodes to delete, by the way.
John, I'm going to skip over to you then. Do you think that Favreau will bring a higher echelon of directors with him to come in for the episodes? Or do you think that he's going to strictly stick to, you know, with known television directors?
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about that today, and I don't think he will. I think when I think about TV shows like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones, stuff like that, I rarely realize who directs these individual episodes, and sometimes like it'll be like, oh, this, you know, Mel Gibson directed an episode of The Office. I'm like, what? You know, even though that didn't happen, but it's just like I had no idea.
or a random member of the cast.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
the guy who played Jim Halpert directed this episode. It was so good. No, I don't know. So I think they are fully aware that everyone's eyes and ears are on what they're doing in terms of who they're bringing in. And I know there was a lot of fire today about the fact that it's another white dude being brought in to oversee a project. And they're aware of that. Like, Kathleen Kennedy is not stupid. I think Favreau kind of like, when he met with them, he's probably like, guys, I got this. Like, don't worry about it. You know, I know people, and they probably bounced people off him. He's like, I like that. I like that. They're figuring it all out, but they're not going to just throw it all at us at once for a project that's not going to see the light of day for almost 2 years or a year and a half or something like that. So long story short, I don't think he's just going to bring in, let me get this guy who did this movie with me and Vince Vaughn, and let me get, you know, this guy. I don't think it's going to be like that at all. But I think he is confident enough, and they're confident enough in him, that he'll find the right people, but we may not necessarily have ever heard of them before.
Yeah, that's a good point. Me personally, man, I'm pumped on this. I think Jon Favreau has been like a pick for a standalone film, or even to, you know, get something going.
He's been rumored like forever.
Like if he could be the first director for the jump-starting Benioff and Wise series, you know, like, or something like that, I would have been pumped. But this is great. I think like him coming in and directing this series, I think like he's a good starting point to get everybody hooked in and bought in on this new streaming service. And they're like, all right, well, if Favreau's going to do it, like, I'm interested now. I'm going to check that out. And then they might actually make that purchase.
He has been on the top of my list since Star Wars came back. Because I just feel like seeing Iron Man and seeing everything that he's done, except for Cowboys and Aliens, we'll just look and see that never happened. It gets me really, really excited. And I don't think an announcement for a director or executive producer, writer has gotten me more excited than Favreau.
Now, I'm just thinking about this in terms of their business sense, because Disney's launching this with their new streaming service, and they want that thing to sell. So what if they go for it, they go for the home run, and they somehow work Vader into this series?
Ooh, but now
I mean, it's possible.
What's the way to do it into there? Do Vader into it then?
You just do it.
You just do it.
You figure out a way and make it happen.
You're hired. I like the cut of your jib.
I mean, this goes back to my question. You know, directed at Bill, is like, we don't know what the series is about. And I mean, it theoretically could be something where like Anakin isn't even born yet, you know, so we just don't have any clue.
Right. But I'm just thinking Golden Goose here.
In this like kind of prime thing, I think Rebels just did that. You know what I mean? They're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to like very simply and tastefully place him in specific spots to just boost those like season 2
But make sure he's in the commercial when they promote the show at the beginning.
Correct. Yeah,
we talked about this earlier in the week in our chat, but I think some of us are getting tired of the original trilogy era. It would not surprise me at all if they went into that 30 years between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens and did something similar to maybe like the underworld, or I would love to see the Jedi Academy stuff or whatever. I mean, I just think that
they should just get Kate Beckinsale and make an underworld series.
Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right. Howie, once again, I like the cut of your jib. You're hired.
I have to Google cut of your jib.
I actually kind of think, like, if you think, well, we gave you that original trilogy stuff, like, here's the Han Solo stuff, here's Rogue One, we gave you all that in the films. Now for the films, we're going outward. We're doing the Rian Johnson stuff, we're doing the Benioff and Weiss stuff. But for our TV stuff, we're going right back to that Vader sweet spot, you know what I mean? And that might actually sell people and get, like, I think you got to convince people they want that show. And I think if you put Vader on there, there's a good chance that people are like, all right, you sold me, you know what I mean? And it's not just Jon Favreau, it's like the characters as well, the time frame.
Well, that actually is a really tough sale, though, with the whole touching back on Vader, because I know a lot of people, at least I've talked to, were all kind of sick of the period between episode 3 and 4. The comics are covering a lot of that. The books are covering a lot of that. So when is enough, you know? Like, when are we going to move out of that?
That's for us. And I think, like, we're getting tired of that time frame.
Maybe
but I
it's
think
just
for the
us,
mainstream, major audiences, they're like, I don't know, what about this Adam Sandler movie? And then they're like, ooh, Vader, you know?
So, Adam Sandler is Vader coming next summer.
Let's move on to the next story, guys. Last Monday, we got the series finale for Star Wars Rebels, which means this may be our last time for a while to talk about this show. I want to take a second to remind us of the journey we've been on since this show returned for the second half of the 4th season. So I'm going to run through the episode titles and a quick description real quick. Jedi Knight was the first episode. It had Kanan, Ezra, and Sabine infiltrating the city in order to rescue Hera. They do so successfully, but Kanan pays the ultimate price and in turn teaches Ezra one last lesson. Next episode was Doom, which features the rebels each dealing with loss in their own way while Thrawn decides he's going to have to take things into his own hands at the failure of Arinda Pryce. Wolves at the Door followed that up. It showed us the Ghost Crew getting back on the saddle and riding the Loth Wolves to the ancient Jedi temple under the surveillance of the Empire. After that, A World Between Worlds. It had Ezra entering the temple through the hidden gate presented by the Mortis family, showing him the way. Once inside, he was able to save Ahsoka, but had to make the hard decision to let Kanan go. A Fool's Hope was about Ezra's ludicrous plan to save Lothal without the help of the Rebel Alliance, and despite all the odds, he accomplished the mission and had Governor Pryce under their custody. The last and final episode was an hour long, and it was called Family Reunion and Farewell. This was the final assault that, while started off well, led to Ezra having to make a decision that Kanan had set him up for. Ultimately, Ezra chose to sacrifice himself in order to catch Thrawn off guard and send them both into the unknown, allowing the rebels to finish their mission and give the citizens of Lothal the upper hand in order to take back the planet forever. Now, I'm going to kick this chat off by saying I personally loved what they did here. And for me, it's hard to find things that I don't like about it. I loved that they brought everything back to Lothal. I loved that they understand it's not imperative that every one of these characters are killed off. I loved the Purrgil. That's right. I said it. You heard me.
Space whales.
I loved it back in season 2. I thought this was an amazing way to tie Ezra's journeys and abilities into the Force and what he's ultimately capable of doing. I feel justified by Ezra being lost in the wilderness, only to be found later, presumed a very different person. I was kind of preaching that for a while. That's the story I wanted to hear, and it looks like that's the story we're getting. And off of that, I feel like there was an outcry to make Sabine the main character of the show at one point. And again, it looks like we might be getting that in the future. I loved this show. I think that it had a perfect ending, and I'm sad to see it go. But from that on, what did you guys think of Rebels?
Well, for me, I really, really liked the movie The Dark Knight Rises. But like, I can fully admit there's a lot of filler there in the middle. But at the end, it's the perfect ending. To me, Rebels, the final episode is a lot like that. There's a lot of kind of in the middle stuff that I didn't really like feel, that never really reached the high of Twilight of the Apprentice, which is my favorite episode, but it still was able to wrap the story in a satisfying way. And I think the best part of what the finale did, it simultaneously ended the journey of all of the Rebels crew, while it also hinted towards some really, really, really exciting things in the future. So just in full spoilers, I guess. Do we have to say that? Or
No.
no? I was just I didn't want somebody to listen and be like, well, I hadn't watched it yet. Seeing Ahsoka at the end, if you've ever seen that GIF of Rafiki in the Jungle Book, The Lion King, he's alive. She's alive. That was my reaction. So I mean, it gave me that same feeling. The end did that.
So
Twilight of the Apprentice.
We'll call you Rafihi from now on.
Bill Rafihi. There you go. Thank you.
Well, John, I think I mean, I might be speaking for Pat. I haven't heard his full thing on this yet, but you might actually be the one that kind of had the most, like, maybe, I'm not so sure about this show. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't as big of a fan of Rebels as you guys from the beginning, so in fairness to that, we have to put it in that perspective. But I didn't love the ending for a few reasons. One, I like finality, and I know we kind of got it, but like when I look at my bookshelves and I see my movie collections, I need the other bookend, and I didn't feel I got that with this ending for Rebels. And I think I was almost cursed by how much I loved the week before's episodes. Those were my favorite. I told you that from the get-go. I talked about it last week, how much I liked it, and I feel like because of that, this kind of was a letdown to me. I think like the open-ended ending for Ezra had to happen to explain his absence in the original trilogy events, and I think Pat or somebody months ago predicted that they wouldn't kill Ezra just because he's our lead protagonist and he's a young character, and little kids grew up watching him, and seeing him die might have been a little too much for them. And like I said, I really just think it had to do with those 2 episodes the previous week that really sucked me in, and I didn't get the payoff I was expecting. But I understand what they did. I understand why 70% of our listeners voted that they love the ending. For me, it was a bit of a misfire. But that's just my take.
So Pat, give us your thoughts on this episode, or even the second half of the 4th season.
The second half of the 4th season was actually very good in my opinion. It kind of feels like, they were cleaning house and trying to like wrap everything up, like make sure everything is taken care of here. But I feel like what they did in the first half really complemented this part a little more, and it wrapped up the way I wanted it to, but left it open-ended enough to where they can still make new content, give us new things. One of the things I liked, and a lot of people didn't catch this, was Ezra when he hands Chopper the lightsaber, and then Chopper turns around and hands Sabine the lightsaber, is almost like a little nod of Filoni saying, get ready, fans, this is the handoff for what's about to come.
Ooh, that's a good point. Really good point.
And it kind of equates back to, because this just happened, but the Olympics, when the host city hands off the Olympic flag to the next host city. And that kind of was, I was thinking, wow, that's kind of cool, considering all the things that just happened in sports culture.
Dude, if they add curling to the next Star Wars animated series, I am in.
Ice cornhole, baby.
Yeah.
I think that you're dead on, Pat. Like, that's not the only like little bit of
there's several
tasteful
there
metaphor. I mean, like, this thing is just like completely jam packed of
it's like Lord of the Rings
connections.
Yeah, there's a lot of Lord of the Rings.
Space whales are the
first
Eagles.
of all,
like that's
it literally is connected to Lord of the Rings because the episode is called A Fool's Hope.
As the only one who didn't love it, did you guys feel like it gave you an ending and closure?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it did, but I can understand why you're upset. Not upset, but like it wasn't that final ending, because it was more a beginning to me than anything, because like it doesn't really explain like why the Empire didn't come back. It said
it does,
but it says like, oh well, yeah, the New Hope happened and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but like it just it can feel like to some like a cop out, and I can understand that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I could sit here and argue why I think like those things are final points to me, but I think the main thing for me is that this is Ezra's story. This is Ezra meeting the rebels, and this is where he ultimately had to go in order to do what he wanted to do from the first episode. Yep. He didn't like the Empire. He didn't like them on Lothal. He wanted them out of Lothal, and this is the end of that story. He was the leader of this mission that ultimately accomplished his goal. his end goal. And even when he was fighting with the rebellion with other people, he was still saying like, but what about Lethal? When are we going back there? They need us. And so when he was ultimately able to do that and he was able to save the planet, that's the end of the story. That's the end of the closure. All the other secondary characters, they're going to go off and do their own thing. But right now, Ezra's, he did what he needed to do.
I will say this. I loved hearing the more Senator Palpatine voice through McDermott. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And I liked that Ezra did kind of go through the full motion and have his little I am a Jedi like my father before me moment with that version of the Emperor where he didn't take the bait. So I thought that was kind of cool and a reflection of like, oh, so maybe Ezra is officially a Jedi now, or something like that. But just the ending was very Return of the King to me or something, and that movie never friggin' ended. So I don't know, maybe that's burned in my brain. I'm not sure. But.
And John, don't worry, because I know like you, there's a lot of fans out there who voice their thoughts. It's almost like you have like this finale remorse because you're just so used to a story, closing up well and, tying a nice bow on it. And that's perfectly fine and reasonable. But on the positive side, this means there will be more content on the way to enjoy. Which is the positive side of it. But like James was saying, this is ultimately Ezra's story. They tied the bow on Ezra's story, even if it doesn't seem that way.
Yeah, to your point, John, Star Wars never ends. Like it is always consistently. It's so connected. Yeah,
but
it's so connected that every story is tied in. So when you could say like, well, this really should have ended Sabine's story, it doesn't, because Sabine's story still continues on. But this story, the Rebel story, it was Ezra's. Does that kind of make sense to me? That's why I feel like that story's closed. But the secondary characters move on, and that really doesn't give a lot of finality. It just sets up other stories. What's Sabine doing? What's Hera doing? What's Zeb doing? But that's not what's important to the Rebels show.
I needed Yub
TV
Nub.
series.
I didn't get Yub Nub.
Yeah. I needed the Battle of Scarif, and I didn't get the Battle of Scarif. Anyway, we got one more story, guys. Our friend of the podcast, Anthony Breznican, released for EW a sort of synopsis and brief description on the deleted scenes for the upcoming digital release and Blu-ray of the Star Wars The Last Jedi. On top of that, the Star Wars show this week gave us one of the deleted scenes in its entirety. The scene involved a more detailed confrontation between Finn and Phasma, which could have actually altered the results of the Last Jedi Challenge brought to you by the Resistance broadcast. And now I'm clearly wrong here, right? But I could have sworn I remember Rian Johnson clearly saying that these deleted scenes that are showing up weren't just some pre-viz stuff. They were finished, completed scenes. I mean, I guess I'm wrong here, but either way, John, on this scene specifically, do you think it was right to pull it out of the movie, or should this have been in the film?
Well, first I will say that this particular scene was very Finn-ish.
It was Finn-ish.
All right, I'm here all night. I actually I went through the scenes that Breznican broke down, and I thought about them and which one should have been in, should have been out. This one I thought should have replaced what was in there. If you've listened to our podcast before, you know the one scene I really didn't like in this movie was the battle between Finn and Phasma, because I felt like it was too quick. It was very like 90s action movie with the cheesy one-liners like Schwarzenegger, like, come on, Chrome Dome, and like, hey, and then just blangs her in the face. It didn't feel like Star Wars to me, and this did. There was a lot more weight to this scene, the deleted scene.
There was depth
to
what he was saying.
For both Finn and Phasma, and the whole mutiny aspect of it is something we didn't see very often with stormtroopers turning on their superiors. We've seen them like run away when they were afraid, like, oh God, stuff's going down, let's get out of here. But we've never seen them really turn in bulk on a superior like that. So I think this was, I mean, it's good for Disney that I'm not involved, but if it was up to me, I would say put this thing in and take out the other version. And I want to get into a couple of the other ones later, but I want to hear what the other guys think on that.
I want to throw this out there too, that when I watched the scene, I'm very well aware that when I saw it, everything that Phasma and Finn, or I should say, everything that Finn was saying to Phasma was things that you could get from The Force Awakens and The Force Awakens alone. But the first time I heard it, I thought, oh my gosh, this is canon stuff. This is the Phasma 5-issue comic run explaining her going in and deleting the security cameras and chasing this dude out. But then I started thinking about it. I was like, no, I mean, I guess what he's saying is stuff you could pull from just Force Awakens, but it felt so deep cut to me. Like it was like something I've seen elsewhere. I saw her do that stuff. You could connect it
on both planes.
I didn't just like, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was just kind of an interesting thing to me.
Well, that would be the natural assumption, is that like if she survived that, obviously she doesn't want to get out. So you delete that, make sure that it doesn't happen. As far as my feelings towards this, I mean, I loved it. Like and I told you guys I was a fan of the original Phasma Finn fight because it just, I love the music coming in. I love the emotion that I felt in it, but this was better in pretty much every way, shape, or form. It didn't have like all the finished stuff in it, but at the same time, it's like, wow. I mean, they're both in the eyes of those stormtroopers equally as traitorous because she's the reason that Starkiller Base is gone, essentially.
And it's like one of those things where the stormtroopers are probably like, well, what does this guy have to lose to lie to us? Yeah,
so exactly.
He must be telling the truth. He has nothing to lose. He has no reason to lie to us.
It was finally that scene that kind of described their like relationship to me, and like you finally Phasma's always had like this glary, hard exterior, but like the emotion that Gwendolyn Christie is able to show with just one eye is amazing to me.
Yeah.
So I
you know, Finn has been in those stormtroopers' shoes before.
Yep.
And he's preaching to them and he's saying, guys, like, I know how you guys think of Phasma. She's secretive. She never takes her mask off. You don't know anything about her. She's very like to herself and will do anything for herself. And then he knows exactly what he needs to say to expose that to those people.
If you betray her, you can use a lightsaber too, man.
That's true.
Pat, give me your quick thoughts on this, and then I want to jump back over to those Anthony Breznican breakdowns.
I thought it was cool because it kind of tied in with how the situation was handled in the Phasma novel, with Cardinal kind of finding out what was going on with Phasma and her dark past, and how they also had a confrontation very similar to this one. So I, as a canon junkie, really appreciated that. I kind of felt like Finn's Rebel Scum line was not as good as the one that we did get in the official film version, but I do appreciate that there's like some finality there, that Phasma's finally like, she's getting met again with the same issues of her past. So I did like that a little bit, but I'm at the same time I'm kind of like, you know what, I'm okay with what we got in the film.
Very cool. So tell me then, jumping back to the Anthony Breznican stuff, we actually kind of broke these deleted scenes a while back, and I was wondering, you know, when they first got announced, what your thoughts are on which ones you were excited to see. Do you have any preference now that they're a little bit more official, which one you're most interested in?
Well, I know he didn't cover all of them in his article, so I think that's more of like, you know, we're going to get some of those closer to the digital release. He might release another article, so don't worry, Anthony Breznican's got plenty of stuff coming down the road. The stuff I was really interested back then was the Mega Destroyer incursion extended scene and Rey and Chewie in the Falcon. It looks like the Mega Destroyer stuff sounds pretty cool still, so that's nice to see. And I didn't have much faith in the whole Luke has a moment scene, but now I'm starting to come around on that and appreciate what Breznican had to say about that, because I figured it's like, how would that fit in with what we got in the film where Luke reaches through the Force and touches the stone and feels Leia that way? I felt like that was more powerful in the film. Where he's almost like accepting the Force back into his life again, whereas I'm not exactly sure how this is all going to fit in. And then I'm also looking forward to what this alternate opening is. I am really excited about that, and that's got me really pumped.
All right, Bill, you're the furthest out of all of us in the Last Jedi novelization, so I'm going to ask you, how much of these deleted scenes actually show up in the book?
None that I'm aware.
9.
That's right.
You say 9 of the deleted scenes.
From what I can, it's more not deleted scenes as much as like expanding what we already know. Like that, like Pat said, that prologue is probably one of the coolest what ifs that I've ever like read in my entire life. Just because like it puts everything down to a T where if this one thing had gone wrong and Luke's having that dream, and it's really, really cool for me to see. But I've got to compliment Jason Fry here. Because like I've read other novelizations of Star Wars movies, and this was the first Audible I've ever done. And this isn't an ad. I just wanted people to know this isn't an ad.
Yeah. So put in promo code Resistance Broadcast into Audible, and
there you go. But the Audible for this, I'm really getting into it. It's expanding things. There's a certain scene on Octo that expands some kind of Luke's motivations and thoughts at one particular point where I'm like, oh snap, I don't want to give any spoilers because I want you guys to experience it yourself, but I cannot compliment Jason Fry and the Last Jedi novelization enough because it is a fantastic, fantastic book.
Yeah, dude, Mark Thompson, I think he's the one doing it. That guy is unreal. He is so good. He really brings you in, like, to help you feel like you're just like a blind person watching The Last Jedi, but an extended version of it.
There are moments where he does voices where he's just like, okay, that's Snoke, or okay, that's Yoda.
Yeah. Tremendous.
Like it's amazing.
I've been listening to the audiobooks for a long time, and there's another one that's always funny to me. And not that they do a bad job, but it's funny that his name is Jonathan Davis, because I'm like, that's a singer for Korn. Yeah. And like every time he's announced as the person who's going to be reading the book to me, I'm like, here we go. Like, I don't know. I just picture Jonathan Davis, reading it to me. Guys, that was a good recap of the main stories this week. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, and we don't have a whole lot of time on this podcast, so I'm sending it over for the Scoundrels Rundown.
Yeah, this Scoundrels Rundown is brought to you by the Resistance Broadcast TeePublic Store. This rundown will be a series of 3 solo-based stories in tribute to our Triple Solo t-shirt, which is now available with color variants, and you can find these at teepublic.com/user/Resistance Broadcast. What if I told you the name of the villain from Solo, a Star Wars story, has been leaked? When you think of Star Wars villains, you think of cool names like Darth Vader, Darth Sidious, aka Emperor Palpatine, Darth Maul, Thrawn, Kylo Ren, and now coming to theaters to battle Han Solo in just 75 days, Enfys Nest. Enfys Nest? Isn't that the syndrome that parents get when their kids move out of the house?
Mm-hmm. It is. It is.
Maybe Nest's parents gave him or her that name so they would grow up to be tough, like the Johnny Cash song Boy Named Sue. I can picture Han Solo making fun of that name like Rocket made fun of Taserface in Guardians of the Galaxy. Enfys Nest. You better pay up, Solo, or you're going to get an old-fashioned Enfys Nest beat down. Well, anyway, the team over at yakface.com uncovered this stuff from some leaked promotional material, so good job using their detective skills over at Yakface. Speaking of character names, the guy from Swingers, Jon Favreau, is not only making Star Wars movies, but he is in Star Wars, and the character he is voicing has had its name revealed, and it is 10 times better than Enfys Nest. Due to a Funko Pop leak, we now know that Favreau's 4-armed piloting baby monkey-looking character in Solo is called Rio Durant. Voicing a Star Wars character would be a dream come true for most people, but Jon Favreau is not most people, and he is doubling down on Star Wars, as we mentioned earlier, as he'll be writing and producing the first ever live-action Star Wars series. One person who is not in Star Wars anymore is Michael K. Williams. As you may remember, due to the director drama, Ron Howard had to reshoot a lot of this movie, and Williams was unavailable to reshoot his scenes as crime boss Dryden Voss, which is a way better name than Enfys Nest.
God, he hates that name.
Taserface?
William Taserface. Enfys
I need
Nest?
2 things to defeat Enfys Nest: a blaster and that guy's leg.
Williams stopped by EW's SiriusXM station and talked about his time on set, and that he's sad that his amazing scenes filmed with his co-stars won't see the light of day. Williams has been replaced by Paul Bettany, but Williams did let it slip that his character Dryden Voss had scenes on the Millennium Falcon, according to EW. unless we get the Snyder cut, it sounds like we will never see any of the cuts involving Williams' portrayal. For articles on all these stories, in addition to all of your latest Star Wars news, reviews, interviews, editorials, information, and more, head to our website, starwarsnewsnet.com. That's it for this week's Scoundrels Rundown, so let's check in with Pat to see what he has pulled from the question vault this week in hashtag #AskTheResistance. Hopefully no questions about Enfys Nest. Chewie, get us out of here.
Salacious, I know you're on John's bracket, but that doesn't mean that bracket needs to be in this questions vault. Alright everyone, welcome to Ask the Resistance. This is where you send us your questions on Twitter. So this week we're going to kick it off with Sean Posey at Rebel Bendu, and he asked us, is Disney moving Avengers Infinity War to give Solo more of a buffer between the two films? Bill, do you think they bumped it up for Solo?
I think there are a couple of things at play here. Yes, I think that they may have bumped it a little bit to help Solo a little bit because you don't want an oversaturated market. Because that gives it 3 weeks or 3 weeks of Avengers Infinity War. But you also have Deadpool 2 coming out May 18th, which is about 2 weeks before as well. So I think that it's a little bit of people were excited, so they just like, okay, go ahead and release this, and we have this other movie coming out with going up against Deadpool. So I think that's probably what's at play here. So yeah, great question.
I actually think they moved it up just in time for my birthday, because my birthday's on the 26th of April, so super pumped for that, and
still haven't seen one Avengers Infinity War thing yet.
Are you kidding me?
You're doing well.
I'm doing the test, man.
Okay.
I want to see what it's like to walk into a movie that I'm super excited for, and I never saw any trailer, any marketing.
Good for you, man.
Our next question comes from Villain at SW Movie TV, and they asked us, do you guys think there is any chance that the Benioff and Weiss series could be a series of standalone films? That would mean we would probably get the standalone movies in between the Johnson trilogy. So James, are they going to put these films in between the Johnson trilogy movies?
They absolutely are going to put these movies between the Johnson movies, but I don't think that they're going to be a different series of standalone films. I do think that these are going to be connected. I think they're going to try to Harry Potter this and do like a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and make it bigger than just a trilogy. I definitely don't think that these are going to be series of standalone in the sense of like the first Benioff and Weiss movie is Boba Fett. The second one is Yoda. I think if they really wanted to do that, they'd find different directors and different people to do those separate standalone movies. I think this implies that since they're doing the whole arc of series, that it's one continuous story, but the timeline is too perfect for them to do, or for them not to do December Rian Johnson, December Game of Thrones, December Rian Johnson, December, the Benioff and Weiss series is all the same thing. I'm just saying it's back and forth, just as they have been in the past.
Yeah, I agree. It just gives time for production more than anything. So everybody, keeps their ducks in a row, and so it doesn't put so much strain on the people over there at ILM and Skywalker Sound, too. It gives a little bit of breathing room to work on both projects. And our next question comes from our buddy of the podcast, Fred Fetty Campo, at Fred M. Campo, and he asked us, we have always loved the Skywalkers and the Resistance. Do you think future Star Wars films will make us turn sides and see Rebels as the bad guys if it hasn't already? John, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good because Fred has his own name and his Twitter handle. I'm a big fan of that. So Fred at Fred M. Campo. Fred, I'm going to guess it's Michael. If I'm right, let me know on Twitter. I think we are. I think we're going to get not a direct opposite of a Rogue One situation, but I think we're going to get an isolated, single, like Empire or something from the bad guy's viewpoint, as though they're doing the right thing type of movie. I think it'll be fresh. I think it'll be awesome. I would almost want to take a risk and say that might be one of the upcoming standalone films that we're going to get soon. I would love it, honestly. Getting that vantage point, it would just add the other half of the sphere to how we look at these movies and these arcs. And if you do want to dive back into the original trilogy, which, like Bill and I keep talking, we need to get away for a while. if you're going to do it, this is when you do it, is when you give us kind of like the Inferno Squad type of thing where you
I would be 100% okay. I'd be okay with the film version of that. That'd be dope.
If you give us something in that ilk, it would be fresh and new, and you wouldn't be conflicting with our heroes that we know from the Rebellion side, so I'd be down with that. But I think that's going to happen. That's a good question, Fred, and cheers.
Yeah, I think that was one of the redeeming qualities I actually liked about Inferno Squad and the Battlefront 2 game was you actually get to see these rebels like almost like in a different light you've never seen before, but you know, deep down, like those are still the rebels you know and love. There's nothing different about them. It's just the way they're portrayed. So I think that's great in cinematic. So great question. All right, guys, that's all the questions for this week. But if you would like to send us your questions, you can send those to us at our Twitter, RBATSWNN, and make sure to include the hashtag AskTheResistance, or we won't see your questions. John, back to you.
All right, thanks a lot, Pat. And yeah, even if you don't tweet at us, you can just send a tweet and fire off the hashtag, and we'll be able to find it a lot easier. So we appreciate that. And it's just a better chance for you to get yours found and brought on the show. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for joining the Resistance. Like I said, we just blew past 2,000 followers on Twitter. Thank you so much for spreading the word about our show, and welcome to our new listeners. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you're listening and following us, remember we put our shows out every Monday and Thursday, so more importantly than following on Twitter and just listening, make sure you're subscribed on either iTunes, SoundCloud, or YouTube so you're notified when the episodes go live. For all of your latest Star Wars news, reviews, editorials, and information, just go to our website, starwarsnewsnet.com. Hey, James, where can people find you?
You can find me online on Twitter at MyraTrunks, MIRAHTRUNKS. That's on Twitter and on Instagram. And this week, I'm just going to be clicking the heck out of that Boba Fett right there at the top. Yep, he's the coolest character in Star Wars, so that's where you're going to be able to find me.
All right, Pat, where are you at?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Gana136, Gana136 over on the Cantina forum, and also catching up on all the canon reading material. I'm so far behind these guys. These guys are knocking out the TLJ novelization. I might not get to it for another month. That's how far behind I am.
You'll catch up. We have faith in you. Remember, do or do not, Pat. There is no try. Bill, where can people find you, man?
You guys can find me on Twitter at Star Wars Bill. You guys can find me listening to Audible, hashtag not an ad, of the novelization of The Last Jedi. Thank you guys so much for listening. May the Force be with you.
All right, and you guys can hit me up on Twitter at Johnny Hoey, and also finding me writing and editing for StarWarsNewsNet.com. Our first round of polls in the hashtag Star Wars March Madness tournament are posted now. So go find those and vote on each matchup with who you think is the cooler Star Wars character. Not the favorite, not the best, not the most badass, the coolest character.
Vote for Bill. Sorry, I had a cough.
Out of those matchups.
I'm so sorry.
Hashtag have a cough drop. For those of you who emailed us your brackets, good luck. The bracket with the highest score at the end of the tournament will win a Resistance broadcast t-shirt of your choice. Tune in to our next episode Thursday as it marks the return of Star Wars Wars, where we will debate Pat and Bill versus James and I over whether or not Lucasfilm should even make an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie. So subscribe and be ready to listen in on Thursday morning right here on the Resistance broadcast.